Hello and welcome to Destination Timeshare. I'm Jeremy. If you're planning a trip to one of the Westin Vacation Club timeshare resorts in Cancun, Mexico, and that would be Westin Lagunamar or the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, well, you're going to want to stick around because I'm going to compare those resorts right after this. If you're a Marriott Vacation Club or VISTANA Signature Experiences timeshare vacation club owner, or maybe you're just planning a trip to Cancun, Mexico, well, we're going to talk about the differences between Westin Lagunamar and the Westin Cancun. Two very different properties in the hotel zone in Cancun, Mexico. First up, we're going to talk about the villas. The Westin Lagunamar, well, there's 290 two-bedroom villas. Those actually lock off into a one-bedroom and a studio, so for a total of 580 kind of individual units. Many people might stay in a two-bedroom, while some people stay in a studio, some people stay in a one-bedroom. So quite a few units there, and they have ocean view and oceanside view designations. Now, those two-bedroom units, they're 1,440 square feet, so pretty big villas. In fact, the one-bedroom is 740 square feet, and the studio is 400 square feet. But one thing to keep in mind here is that some rooms, while they're very close to the beach, others might not be. The resort is kind of a big W shape, so keep that in mind. You might be in a building that's really close, maybe 1, 9, or 14, and it's just a quick walk to the beach. Or you might be in one of those rooms or buildings that are farther back, and well, to get to the beach, it's quite a bit further. But to get across the street to the La Isla Mall, which we'll talk about that here in a little bit, well, it's quite a bit closer. Now, if we talk about the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, can't really get a definitive number of units here because it is still part hotel and part timeshare. I think there's either 376 or 379 or maybe somewhere in between number of units there, but we're going to just talk about the timeshare side here because if you're a timeshare owner, that's probably where you're looking to stay, is in those timeshare units. They have studio, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom villas. Now, from what I can tell here, by kind of just visually inspecting from the outside of the building, on the ocean side, they have 8 3-bedroom units, 8 2-bedroom units, and 16 studios. Now, on the lagoon side, I think they might have 10 3-bedroom units, 10 2-bedroom units, and 10 studios. Mainly because on the ocean side, there's 4 floors of villas, whereas on lagoon side, well, there are 5. So more units there on the lagoon side. Might have these numbers off by a bit, but that's kind of just my take on it anyway. But those 3-bedroom units, they actually lock off into a 2-bedroom and a studio. They're 1,257 square feet. So you can already see here, 3-bedroom unit, more bedrooms, but quite a bit smaller than the 2-bedroom units up at Lagunamar. The 2-bedroom villas at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, they're only 843 square feet. So a lot smaller. As they did here, they converted essentially what were hotel rooms into timeshare villas, so they had to work within the constraints of those hotel rooms, resulted in much smaller units. The studio units, though, they're 414 square feet, so you get an extra 14 square feet of space there. The oceanside villas here at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, well, I will say one thing for them, they're pretty much right on top of the ocean. When you're out there, you have just a kind of a little section of pools in front of you, and then out beyond that is great views out to the Caribbean Sea. Those oceanside units up at Westin Lagunamar, kind of the same thing, but they're actually set back a little bit more, at least kind of my take on it from visually inspecting the beach there in both locations. So we've actually stayed in an oceanside villa at the Westin Lagunamar and an oceanside villa at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun. And just kind of comparing the two, I would give a big edge here to the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun because those units kind of like right there, the water's right there, beautiful turquoise waters out there to the Caribbean Sea. Definitely not discounting the views from the Westin Lagunamar and those oceanside villas. But if you're in any of the ocean view villas at the Westin Lagunamar, well, those can be set back quite a bit. You have really big pool views and then the ocean kind of beyond. So definitely like those views from the oceanside villas at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun. Now, if we talk about the balconies though, those are a lot nicer at the Westin Lagunamar. The Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, those balconies, those patios, they're not very private. Kind of open on both sides to other people on their balconies. Whereas at the Westin Lagunamar, well, those balconies are more closed in, a little bit more private. Well, You can, though, see maybe somebody way over on the other side of the resort. Now let's kind of compare the villas on the inside. The studios at the Westin Lagunamar, this is our biggest disappointment with the Westin Lagunamar studios. They only have a queen size bed and a queen size pull-out sleeper sofa. Would really prefer a king bed there, where in fact the studios at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, they do actually have king beds in those rooms, in those studios. Now, neither resort has an oven in the villa. Now, the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, they kind of have a kitchenette area in the studios. We didn't stay in the 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom units to kind of compare those to the 2-bedroom units at the Westin Lagunamar. Just realized the kitchens, neither of them have an oven, but they both in fact do have in-room laundry, whether it be a studio, a 1-bedroom at the Westin Lagunamar, a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, whatever it might be. All of the units at both those resorts have in-room laundry. So now that we've covered the units, the villas, let's talk about on-site food and beverage. The Westin Lagunamar, they have Duna Sports Bar, Viento, Oceano Restaurant, and the Tierra Marketplace. There's kind of 4 options to get food and beverage, and this is going to be important when we talk about the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, because they have 3 places: Arena Sports Bar, Sea and Stones Restaurant, and the Palmer Market. So they just have kind of 3 places there. Talking about food, comparing them, they both actually have pretty good food. We've eaten a number of different things at both resorts. Westin Lagunamar, like I said, they have Duna Sports Bar. We've had food in there. It's actually pretty good. I mean, you are paying resort prices. Of course, being in Mexico, they're a little bit cheaper than what you might find here in the United States or even abroad. But they also have Viento with poolside food and beverage, or even at the swim up bar. Oceano, there they have morning breakfast as well as evening dinner. And several nights during the week, they actually have kind of specialty dinners, whether it be a Mayan night or Mexican fiesta. I believe they also have a steak night. We've never actually done that one ourselves. And then they have the Tierra Marketplace, kind of your standard marketplace. The Tierra Marketplace and Palmer Market are actually kind of comparable. I'd put those both about the same. We did in fact eat at both Arena Sports Bar and Sea and Stones Restaurant. Arena Sports Bar was kind of pretty average, so maybe below average. Food wasn't great. Seemed like a lot of it maybe was frozen, pre-prepared, throw it in the fryer, bring it out. But now when we talk about the Sea and Stones Restaurant at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, that is truly a real gem that they have there. But from what I understand, or at least what somebody told us, it is the only restaurant on the ocean side of the hotel zone in Cancun. You're looking at the Cancun hotel zone, you'll notice hotel side is all resorts, hotels, properties, timeshares. And then on the lagoon side, well, that's where you find all of the different restaurants and golf course. So restaurant there, right pretty much on top of the beach at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, is really a nice, lovely place. They have indoor seating, outdoor seating. They had a violinist while we were there. Really not too bad food either for a resort, and the prices were actually pretty good too, unless of course you're looking to get steak or something really high end. We really like the restaurants at both of them. Obviously you have a few more choices and bigger restaurants up at the Westin Lagunamar, but down at the Westin Resort and Spa, well, you only have those smaller two. Now let's talk about the pools. We're going to compare the pools at both properties. At the Westin Lagunamar, you have the upper activities pool. It also has a small water slide, and then you also have the fabulous, probably the best pool in all of Cancun, at least in my opinion. There's probably some better ones, but that is the fabulous infinity pool there at the Lagunamar. Then you have the zero entry pool, kind of a smaller pool on the other side of the property. And then of course, multiple hot tubs around the resort. So fabulous pools. You really can't go wrong if you're going to the Lagunamar. You're gonna have a wonderful time in the pool if you're not hanging out at the beach or in the Caribbean Sea. Now if we go and take a look at the pools at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, well, they have the main pool. It's kind of just a square pool. It does have a swim up bar. They have kind of the rather interesting triangle pools. These were kind of warm when we were there, kind of small. It was obviously hot when we were there. It was in May of 2023. There's actually 3 kind of triangle shaped pools. They actually all kind of are attached under a little bridge. If you're looking at them, it looks like essentially 3 pools. Then you have the lagoon pool and the Tower D pool. So they actually have quite a few pools at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun. And none of them are really all that busy. Whereas if you're at the Lagunamar, it doesn't matter what time of year you're there, the pools are all pretty busy there, even though there's lots of room to move around, but you do see a lot of people in the pools, where we noticed at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, well, the pools there weren't all that busy. They also have a flow rider at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, but didn't see it working. Not sure if it even operates anymore, but if it does, well, you can take advantage of the flow rider there. One drawback of the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun is, well, they only have one kind of small hot tub. I noticed down at the Tower D pool, they kind of had a section that was kind of off of the pool there that looked like it could be a hot tub, but looked like it probably had too much water coming in to make for actually hot water there. So really just kind of one hot tub that I noticed at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun. Now, of course, with the pools, you also have to think of pool chair, pool lounger, hogs. Westin Lagunamar, first thing, crack of dawn in the morning, people are down there snapping up those poolside loungers. It's almost impossible to get a lounger that's essentially first or second row poolside at the Westin Lagunamar on that infinity pool. Didn't notice this at all at the Westin Cancun Resort and Spa. I went around and actually filmed a resort tour in the morning, and there was only maybe one or two chairs here and there where somebody had put a towel out, put a book, put their cheap dollar store flip-flops, whatever it might be, kind of reserve a chair. So when we were there at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, we didn't notice any kind of pool lounger hogging, where it's a big problem up at the Westin Lagunamar. Now let's talk about on-site activities. At the Westin Lagunamar, they kind of have that full on-site activities program, you know, where they do bingo, they do different games, poolside, that kind of thing. They also have mini golf. So if you enjoy a round of mini golf, well, they have that at the Westin Lagunamar. They also have tennis courts with pickleball and basketball as well. Where if we compare it to the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, well, they kind of have more limited activities. They kind of did a poolside music trivia, different kind of trivia games, stuff like that. And they also actually have demonstrations. When we were there, they were doing kind of a guacamole demonstration. They do tastings. They do, though, also have rooftop tennis courts at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun. I didn't notice pickleball there. No lines painted for pickleball or anything like that. Both of them do have full on-site fitness centers as well. So let's actually talk about location. I actually touched on this a little bit earlier because this is really, really important. It might actually make or break a stay and should be a really big deciding factor on which resort you might choose to actually book into or stay at. So the Westin Lagunamar, it is actually at kilometer 12.5. Fabulous location right in the heart of the Cancun hotel zone. Right across the street, you have the La Isla shopping plaza, the shopping mall. Plenty of places to go shop, whether it be high-end or maybe even just some souvenirs, and tons of restaurants. You have just a short walk to tons of restaurants across the street and just a short taxi ride away, whether it be up or down the hotel zone, to literally what could be hundreds of potential restaurants not far away. Now, by contrast, at the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, it's at kilometer marker 20, much further south. And with that, kind of puts it out of the way, probably a good 15-minute walk to pretty much any restaurant there. So if you're not wanting to have to eat on site at the resort a lot, well, you're gonna have to be taking a taxi or a pretty long walk, or you could even take the pretty efficient, if not sometimes frightening, bus system there in Cancun. So just consider that. The location of the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, not ideal, at least when you compare it to the Westin Lagunamar. You're not gonna be walking very many places when you're down there. You're always going to be needing some type of transportation to get around, to get to different restaurants off site. With the resort being so much further down the hotel zone, well, it's a lot closer to the airport, so just a quick little ride over there, whereas if you're at the Westin Lagunamar, it's quite a bit further. Not really anything that really should impact your decision to book one or the other, but just thought I might mention that. Now, another thing to consider here are the beaches at both resorts. You might think, hey, they're on the same stretch of sand. They can't be that much different. Well, I got news for you. They actually are. Up at the Westin Lagunamar, the beach is much, much wider up there, but there's no reef really offshore kind of protecting the beach there. So you're going to have a lot more wave action, and you might even have more seaweed during kind of what is seaweed season. So take that into consideration, because when you compare it to the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, the beach down there, much narrower, but it's kind of a crescent kind of beach there. And there is kind of a break wall and also a reef offshore that kind of help protect it there. I do believe you can snorkel there a lot easier than certainly up at the Westin Lagunamar. So the beach there, really nice, really pristine. Doesn't get as much seaweed, at least from when we were there, which was during seaweed season, because we essentially stayed at the Lagunamar, and then partway through our trip, we moved down to the Westin Resort and Spa. So take that in consideration. The beaches at both really much different. So now one other thing we need to talk about before we get into which one is right for you is kind of the feel of the resort and kind of the resort size. Westin Lagunamar, I would consider this kind of a mega resort, much like a lot of the other big resorts in Cancun. Huge property, huge pools, lots of people too, and it also does seem much more family oriented. Now, if we compare it to the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun, well, that actually kind of has more of a boutique feel. It is a big hotel property, but it's not nearly as big of a piece of land that it sits on, not nearly as expansive. You can walk from one end to the other pretty quickly, and the Westin Lagunamar kind of also has that timeshare vibe. I'm not sure if that's easy to explain or understand, but just kind of has a different feeling when we compare it to the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun. But just kind of contrasting the two, I would put the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun better for couples, smaller, more boutique. Lagunamar, big, massive families. Maybe that makes sense. So which one is actually right for you? Well, I really can't answer that question, but I do hope this video helped you decide. And if it did, I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a thumbs up. Really does help with these videos and helps out the channel a lot. Now, if you want to see another video about one of those two resorts in Cancun, I'll put a link to a video right here. It'll be one of the resort tours of either the Westin Lagunamar or the Westin Resort and Spa Cancun. So check that out coming up next. And thanks for watching. And remember, until next time, the best destination is always a timeshare.